Facebook, and we're here on Zoom. Welcome everyone here that's on the Zoom meeting with us. We welcome you to this next part, this second part of discussion on the Hebrew prophets today. This is Ezekiel part 2, where our guest speaker, Eileen, will present part 2 of her presentation on the prophet Ezekiel. And she will focus on Ezekiel's depiction of Gog and Magog from 3 points of view: Ezekiel's presentation, evangelical Christian belief, and the Baha'i perspective. The ancient narrative will be fleshed out with information from scholars of the Baha'i writings, the Book of Revelation, and Abdul Baha. With that being said, we want to give you a quick little introduction for those of you who are meeting Eileen for the first time. We really recommend that you view part 1 of this presentation that, again, was streamed before, and you can find it on YouTube, Clearwater Baha'is. The channel Clearwater Baha'is on YouTube has plenty of presentations, among which Eileen is a presenter that has presented on view subjects, and we welcome you to look at them, especially part 1. Secondly, we welcome you on the Facebook page for the Baha'i Center of Clearwater to find them as well. That being said, Eileen Maddox grew up in Maine, and she graduated from the University of Kansas with a liberal arts degree. She worked in sales and raised 2 children. She was raised in the Universalist Church, but as an adult, she became a spiritual seeker. In midlife, Eileen discovered and embraced the Baha'i faith. When first introduced to the Baha'i faith, she was seized by the fact that God has always been active in human history, that he had sent hundreds, perhaps thousands of prophets of God to educate humanity. Well, having minored in history during her university studies, Eileen was astonished to realize that the single most important factor in human history, God and his prophets, was not recognized by professional historians. With that said, Eileen has written several books as she has investigated on her own these concepts. And we welcome you now to go look for those books on Amazon.com or whatever local bookstore you can go order them. Eileen Maddox, she is not just an author of one book, but several books. I'll just say her current project is the trilogy, The Coming of the Glory. And Eileen can let people know more about that. As Eileen, I believe you've just published the 3rd book now, right? What is it called?
Well, it's going to be called Volume 3, The Coming of the Glory, and it's going to take another 3 or 4 months.
Okay, so it's in progress as we speak.
Yes.
And what is that about, if you could just help me understand?
It's about the post-exilic prophets and all the prophecies that they made about the coming of the glory and the Baha'i era. It's, in my opinion, the most exciting of the 3 books. It'll be out the fall of 2023.
Okay. And that's amazing. So we're talking about literally the prophecies for the coming of Baha'u'llah and
yes,
the emergence of the Baha'i faith, period.
Yes, that's what it's all about.
Okay. So if those of you interested here, beyond, of course, this presentation, you want to go look at some more books to read, Eileen has them, and they're coming out, and you have to wait a little longer for the next installment. But at the very least, you'll have these first 2 books to look at in this series. And may I remind you, I'm going to remind everyone that this is the series, but there's several other books Eileen has written, and you can find all of them. So again, Eileen, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to just take a step back from introductions now, and I believe we're putting the PowerPoint up, or we're having a PowerPoint today?
Yes, here it comes.
Beautiful. So yeah, for all of you who have questions, we welcome you please to type them in the chat here on Zoom, and Eileen will get to them when she gets to a period she's comfortable to take questions. Preferably, I think we'll be asking questions at the end of this presentation today. So if you can
Yes.
please patiently wait, type your questions in the chat, and we will be happy to make sure that we get to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for your lovely introduction. And it's very
Eileen, you need to unmute
Hi.
yourself.
oh, oh my gracious. Okay, just a minute.
Yeah. So right when you started off, you went mute, I think. So
Okay, just a
Yeah.
minute.
And she has to restart her PowerPoint as well.
okay.
I can't believe this.
It happens. It happens. Well, for all of you who are joining us, again, we welcome you to take a look at the YouTube and the Facebook video from the previous presentation on, again, this is one of several on Ezekiel, and this is part 2. So welcome everyone for this part 2 of Ezekiel, the Hebrew prophets today. So as Eileen sets up again, we welcome all of you to definitely to share this with your friends. We're talking on Facebook, YouTube, or whatever channel you feel appropriate. You've got this Zoom. You can share the Zoom link with people, again, through the participants tab. If you click on it, you can click on the option available to you called invite. And the invite option gives you the ability to send us an email, a message, invite your contacts, or just copy the invite link and send it that way to your friends. So,
Okay, John,
yes.
I do not have my video and my audio mute buttons.
Jeremiah, can you make Eileen a co-host? Because I think if you muted everybody, oh, she is a
No,
co-host.
she is the co-host. It's all right. If you want, Eileen, I can run the presentation from here.
I can run the presentation fine. I just can't unmute my audio because there are no.
You're
No, we hear
unmuted
you
right now.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yeah, somehow I got muted.
Okay, all right.
You were muted. Now you're not.
Right.
Okay,
So if you just want to start your presentation.
okay, here we are. Thank you very much. And again, it's very good to be here. Today, we're going to examine Ezekiel's most perplexing, most apocalyptic narrative, Gog and Magog. We'll review what Ezekiel himself wrote and what the Baha'i writings and scholars say in passages from the book of Revelation. Gog and Magog is a complex subject that I am going to summarize from 3 perspectives as much as possible. Ezekiel's narrative, the evangelical belief, and the Baha'i perspective. Now, there's a very special place on earth, the Holy Land, which perhaps coincidentally is located in the center of the Earth's geographic landmass. Shoghi Effendi said, "Within the heart of this planet lies the most holy land, acclaimed by Abdul Baha as the nest of the prophets, which must be regarded as the center of the world and the Qibla of the nations." And the nest of the prophets in the near Middle East produced Adam, Enoch, Noah, the prophet of Sabianism, Abraham, Zoroaster, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, and the Hebrew prophets who were working within the dispensation of Moses. And
Eileen, excuse me. Eileen, I apologize. You're not sharing your screen. I need you to, if you would be able to start that.
Okay, I'll start over. Okay. Okay, what I'm going to have to do is just leave it and go back to Zoom Okay, I'm sorry about this.
With your permission, Jeremiah can display the PowerPoint. You can just tell him to move to the next slide.
I'm going to have to enter Zoom all over again.
You don't need to do that. Here, I'll share the PowerPoint because I have it. So let me share it, and then we
Okay, well, I've got to get back into Zoom.
Here,
I've
everything's
got-
fine. Everything's fine. So you don't have to change anything. We just need Jeremiah to display the PowerPoint. That's all.
Okay, well, okay. Go ahead, Jeremiah. Let's do it. And I will begin from the beginning. And this goes pretty fast so that you have to
All right, it's up.
pretty fast.
We're all
Okay, we'll start at the beginning. I've just about got the beginning all memorized. The first slide, please. Jeremiah? Can you hear me?
I hear you, Eileen. Are you not seeing the?
No, I'm not seeing it at all. Here's what I'm going to do.
What about now? Oh, she may not. I guess she's having a problem. She might have to actually jump out in order for her to see her
Well,
screen again.
I did jump out. I'm going to have,
You might have to rejoin the Zoom.
yes.
I think there was an issue. That's how we lost your audio to begin with. So go ahead and if you can close out your Zoom and then just come right back in, Eileen, and that should take care of it, hopefully. Does everyone else see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
yes. So while we wait for our friend to rejoin, if someone would like to share, if they've watched the first part, what your impressions are, you're welcome to share your thoughts while we're waiting. Oh, we got Eileen back. Welcome, Eileen. Since you start up your mic and video, we're ready to get started again. All right.
Can you hear me and can you see me?
We can hear you. We cannot see you.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
No.
Okay, let me go back to Zoom. I'm sorry. You'll have to run the PowerPoint yourself. I just can't bring it up.
That's not a problem. So I'm going to start the screen again. And Eileen, can you see the screen?
I get connecting to the scanner. Oh, Lord.
So you don't see the PowerPoint screen right now, Eileen?
Let me go to,
On Zoom, you should be able to see the screen that's showing on Zoom right now, the video from Zoom.
okay. I do see it Maybe it will work for me. Yes, it's working. Starting at the beginning. All systems are a go.
All right.
Okay. Again, thank you very much for having me on the program. I really do appreciate it. And we are going to look at Ezekiel's most perplexing, most apocalyptic narrative, Gog and Magog. We'll review what Ezekiel himself wrote and what the Baha'i writings and the scholars say in passages from the book of Revelation. Gog and Magog is a complex subject, and I'm going to summarize from three perspectives as much as possible. From Ezekiel's, from the evangelical Protestant belief, and from the Baha'i perspective. There's a very special place on earth, the Holy Land, which perhaps coincidentally is located in the center of the Earth's geographic landmass. Shoghi Effendi said, "Within the heart of this planet lies the most holy land, acclaimed by Abdu'l-Baha as the nest of the prophets, and which must be regarded as the center of the world and the Qibla of the nations." The nest of the prophets produced Adam, Enoch, Noah, prophet of Sabianism, Abraham, Zoroaster, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, and the Hebrew prophets working within the dispensation of Moses. And now for that all-consuming question, what is prophecy? And is it real? And one approach is to say that prophecy is history told in advance from the vantage point of God. Abdu'l-Baha said, "The words of God have innumerable significances and mysteries of meanings, each one 1,000 and more." And Baha'u'llah said, "Every knowledge hath 70 meanings, of which only one is known. And we speak one word, and by it we mean 1 in 70 meanings. Each one of these meanings we can explain." So let's keep that in mind as we move along. And we are now focusing on Ezekiel, one of the most fascinating and perplexing of the Hebrew prophets, Gog and Magog. It's probably his most famous vision, and it has inspired many interpretations. We cannot cover all the details, of course, but I will present the main storyline in the book of Ezekiel, and biblical verses are put in italics. "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen, the whole horde, from the far north with all its troops and the many nations with you. I will turn you around" suggests that Gog may be being used by God to fulfill his purpose. And when? In future years, Gog will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. Therefore, Son of man, prophesy and say to Gog, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In that day, when my people Israel are living in safety, will you not take notice of it? You will come from your place in the far north, you and many nations with you. A great horde, you will advance against my people Israel like a cloud. Now, Israel is not meant literally. Israel is a symptom for the microcosm of humanity and all of humanity's struggles. This is what will happen in that day when Gog attacks the land of Israel. My hot anger will be aroused. In my zeal and fiery wrath, I declare that at that time there will be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish, the birds, the beasts, all creatures, and all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. The mountains will be overturned, the cliffs crumble, walls falling to the ground. I will summon a sword against Magog, and every man's sword will be against his brother. I will execute judgment on him. I will pour down the torrents of rain, hailstones, and so on. And I will show my greatness and my holiness, and I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Now, the symbology here is the hail is the rain of spiritual tests. The mountains are society's civil and religious institutions. An earthquake is the total upset of the worldly order. And swords are speech that cut extreme ideologies. And molten sulfur, which is flammable, brings destruction and turmoil, but fire is also a mode of purification. To continue with Gog's saga, this is what the sovereign Lord says: I am against you. I will turn you around and drag you along. I will bring you from the far north and send you against the mountains of Israel. Then I will strike your bow from your left hand and make the arrows drop from your right. On the mountains of Israel you will fall, you and all your troops and nations with you. And so here we see the total defeat of God. And why does mankind have to go through this? I will make known my holy name among my people Israel. I will no longer let my holy name be profaned. And the nations will know that I, the Lord, am the Holy One in Israel. It is coming. It will surely take place. This is the day I have spoken of. Well, does that sound familiar? This is the day. I will make known Son of Man. This is what the sovereign Lord says: call out to every kind of bird and wild animals, assemble and come together from all around to the sacrifice I am preparing, the great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel. There you will eat flesh and drink blood. At my table you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers of every kind. I will display my glory among the nations, and all the nations will see the punishment I inflict and the hand I lay upon them. Okay, so ends Ezekiel's narrative of Gog and Magog. And here is an artistic rendition of the hordes of Gog and Magog coming to the literal land of Israel. And this will rest your eyes a bit from all the printed word that I have put on the screen. And now we will look at an interpretation of Gog and Magog that was developed only recently in Christian history and has been mostly popular in America. The evangelical perspective was largely developed in the 19th and 20th centuries. Catholics and mainstream Protestants do not focus much, if at all, on the seemingly impenetrable prophecies of Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation. But the fundamentalist evangelical approach has taken Gog and Magog a long distance. The 16 volumes tells in fiction The end times, set in the contemporary era in which true believers in Christ have been raptured, taken instantly to heaven, leaving the world shattered and chaotic in the tribulation. And there are 16 best-selling volumes, 65 million books sold, a phenomenon in religious publishing. Plus, films. There are several interpretations in evangelical belief, and I'll give a summary outline of the most usual one. 2 wars are generally seen, with the first book and a chapter and a half of Ezekiel covering the first war, and the second half of the second chapter covering a second war, which is global in scale. The land of Magog in the north is generally believed to be Russia. The rapture will occur just before the second war starts, and all believers in Christ will be lifted up to meet Christ in the air. This is the first resurrection. 7 years of tribulation will follow, and God's wrath will be poured out upon the earth. The Antichrist, singular here, which is important to note, will be a force. The mark of the beast, 666, will be put on the followers of the Antichrist, and those without it will be killed. The final battle between good and evil, Armageddon, will take place in the valley of Megiddo, Israel, and Jesus returns. Satan, the Antichrist, the beast, is defeated and bound for 1,000 years. People will live long lifetimes in incorruptible physical bodies. Jesus establishes the kingdom of God on earth and rules for 1,000 years. He judges the nations. Satan is released after 1,000 years, misbehaves for a short time, and is thrown into a molten lake of fire. And then the second resurrection, and the white throne judgment is given, with all sinful people thrown into the lake of fire, and a new heaven and a new earth will emerge. Now, a lot of this, I would say most of it, is actually taken from the book of Revelation. And that's where we will also go to look at the Baha'i perspective. Spoiler alert, the book of Revelation really is history told in advance. Of its 22 chapters, the events in the first 16 have already occurred, which you will see quite soon. The next 3 chapters, 17 to 19, is the present day. And the last 3 chapters, 20 to 22, are the future. The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his servant John, who testifies to everything he saw. That is the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. Abdu'l-Baha said, the revelations of St. John are not to be taken literally, but spiritually. These are the mysteries of God. It is not the reading of the words that profits you. It is the understanding of their meanings. However, Abdu'l-Baha did go on to say, the Lord God omnipotent hath been enthroned in his kingdom and hath made all things new. This is the truth. And what truth can be greater than that announced in the revelation of St. John the Divine? Now, I have put everything from Chogi Effendi and Abdu'l-Baha in green. My primary Baha'i book for this resource reference is Apocalypse Secrets, Baha'i interpretation of the book of Revelation. It's a little known because it was written and self-published by a British Israeli Christian who practiced medicine many years in Israel. And Dr. Robert Stockman, a foremost American Baha'i scholar and the dean of the Wilmette Institute, wrote a long foreword for Abel's book, which is excerpted here. He wrote, John Abel's book is by far the most careful, thorough, and holistic book yet produced in the genre of Baha'i interpretation of biblical prophecy. It leaves no narrative threads unexplained, and in assembling its detailed interpretation, no stones were left unturned. Future students of the meaning of biblical prophecies who wish to build on the insights in the Baha'i authoritative texts will find Apocalypse Secrets a tour de force and an essential foundational work for their investigations. Okay, now we embark on the book of Revelation to give a Baha'i perspective. And I will take just a snippet from each chapter to show how the drama unfolds, or I should say unfolded, for the first 16 chapters. Biblical quotations are in italics. Comments from John Abel are in red, and quotations from Abdul Baha are in green. And you will notice that John Abel is quite forthright in his statements, and sometimes it seems like maybe he goes a step too far. However, they are quite in line with those in other Baha'i materials on the book of Revelation that I have discovered. Chapter 1, I am the living one. I was dead, and look, now I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Now behold, I live on from an old spiritual cycle to a new spiritual cycle. The old, of course, was the 6,000 prophetic cycle, and the new, of course, is the Baha'i era. Chapter 2, the 7 churches to be addressed are identified as the 7 major religions of the Adamic era. And the first 4 religions are addressed, their failings and their futures. In chapter 3, the last of the 3 religions' strengths, failings, and futures are examined: Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. Chapter 4, after those things I watch, behold, a door open in the sky. After these visions I am alert. Behold, a throne set in the sky, with one seated on the throne. Behold, the door of Jesus revealed from the divine realm as the Bab in 1844. Behold, a revelation from the divine realm, with him established as its revelator in 1863. And then I saw the right hand of him who sat on the throne, a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" At this, the leading elder Baha'u'llah tells me, "Don't despair, John. Behold, I, the scion of prime figure of Judaism, source of the beloved Bab, have had your apocalypse tale interpreted, also for its 7 faiths." The 7 seals are the previous 7 monotheistic religions. And then I saw at the center of the throne and the 4 living beings, and at the center of the elders, a young ram standing as if slain, possessing 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out to the entire world. The 4 living beings are the 4 central figures of the Baha'i faith. the Bab, Baha'u'llah, Abdul-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi. The ram represents the Bab, and mentions of the lamb will also mean the Bab. As the ram breaks the first four seals for the first four faiths, horses appear that represent malign forces, power politics, widespread warfare, national greed, economic injustice, callous neglect. The fifth seal for Buddhism brought forth memories of those slain for the word of God, the Babis. The sixth seal for Christianity, a huge earthquake erupted, the sun turned black, the sky falling, and every mountain and island getting shaken from its place. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Does this sound familiar? I think so. Chapter 7, I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth. I see the four prime figures watching over the whole Middle East, curbing its malign forces. I heard the number of those stamped with the seal from every tribe of the sons of Israel, 144,000. I see those endorsed, many faithful Babis, progressively perfecting faiths endorsed to spiritual heirs of the Israelites. The 144,000. Add 1 plus 4 plus 4 equals 9. Isn't that neat? The number of perfection, the number of the Baha'i faith. This is not literal. This refers to those who accept the current revelation of God. Chapter 8, when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour, and I saw 7 angels who stood before God and 7 trumpets. Now, as the Bab reveals my apocalypse tale for the 7th faith of Islam, peace settles for the Babi revelation from 1853 to 1863. The first 4 angels are going to trumpet the warnings of change given by Abraham, Moses, Zoroaster, and Jesus. And the hail and fire, mountain blazing, stars in the sky falling, every manifestation of God of the 7 religions foretold the next one, and each warned of the consequences of not recognizing the manifestation of God for that day. Chapter 9, I saw a star fall from the sky into the earth. It was given the key to the shaft of I was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. It opened up the shaft. I behold Muhammad as a teacher urgently sent from the divine realm to the barbaric tribes of Arabia. He brings Islam as his remedy for escaping from spiritual error. His Islam reveals their escape from spiritual error. But smoke billowed from this shaft like the fumes of a great furnace. The sun and the air went dark, divisive descent, blocked escape from spiritual error. The abyss means a pit without the pit of error, the pit of ignorance. Chapter 10. Next, I saw another mighty angel landing from the sky, wearing a cloud, the rainbow over his head, his face like the sun, his legs like pillars of fire, and in his hand holding a small open scroll. And Abel sees this angel, this messenger, as Baha'u'llah, sent from the divine realm to renew the divine law. to promise the seven faiths unity. And interestingly enough, this is how Baha'u'llah appeared to Ezekiel in Ezekiel's very first vision, with the rainbow, the face like the sun, legs like pillars of fire, and so forth. Chapter 11, I will give power to my two witnesses. They shall prophesy for 1,260 days. These men are the two olive trees, the two torches standing before the Lord of the world. By these two witnesses are intended Muhammad, the messenger of God, and Ali. The commandments of these two witnesses were to be followed for 1,260 days, each day corresponding to a year. And those were lunar years, by the way. Here the prophet Daniel is referred to. He had prophesied 1,260 lunar years from 622, the year of the Hijra, the immigration from Mecca to Medina, to the year 1844. The beast made war against these two witnesses. By this is intended a spiritual war. Now, this is Abdu'l-Baha speaking, meaning that the beast would act in complete opposition to the teachings, conduct, and character of these two witnesses. Now, it's important, before we move on to the end, to review the covenant of Baha'u'llah, which was broken immediately before, if not after, right after his death. Ali had been Muhammad's chosen successor, but Abu Bakr was appointed. He led Islam down the road of military conquest, skipping vital time needed for spiritual consolidation of Islam from within. Two more caliphs followed, and they continued military conquests and fell into a systemic corruption. Ali was finally chosen in 656, but the damage had been done. He was murdered 5 years later. The Umayyad Caliphate followed, and this was where the Islam split into the two factions, the Sunnis, who followed the Caliphate, and the Shias, who followed the descendants of Ali in the Imamate. Now, chapter 12, and Abdu'l-Baha said a lot about chapter 12. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. This woman is that bride, the religion of God that descended upon Muhammad. The sun with which she was clothed and the moon which was under her feet are the two governments which are under the shadow of that religion, the Persian and the Ottoman. This religion will suffer great difficulties and endure great toil and trouble until a perfect offspring is produced therefrom. By this offspring is meant the Bab, the primal point, who was in truth born from the religion of Muhammad. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the earth and flung them to the earth. This dragon represents the Umayyads, who seized the reins of the religion of Muhammad, and the 7 heads and 7 crowns represent the 7 dominions and the kingdoms over which they came to rule. The 10 crowns represent the 10 names of the Umayyad rulers. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. This child was the promised manifestation, who is the offspring of the religion of Muhammad. The Umayyads were ever anxious to lay hold on the promised ones, for they greatly feared his ascent. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. The religion of God betook itself to the desert, meaning the vast desert of Hijaz and the Arabian Peninsula, which became the home, the habitation in the entire entree of the religion of God. According to the terminology of the Bible, the 1,260 days means 1,260 years, during which the religion of God was fostered until the promised one appeared. And the promised one, of course, was the Bab. The dragon stood on the sand of the sea. From the sea I saw a beast rising with 10 horns and 7 heads, 10 sovereign crowns on its horns, and blasphemous titles on its heads. Oh my. Militant Islam took control. From the coast I behold its brutal Umayyad Caliphate rising in AD 666, with 10 leader names, 7 domains, 10 dynastic caliph names, and the false titles of Sunnah and Caliphate ruling over its domains. Now, let the one with a mind calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a human being. His number is 666, and it is the code for Muyawa. The year 666 was the year that he was declared as the first Umayyad Caliphate. And here is a map of the Umayyad Caliphate at its greatest extent. And you can see the extent of the militarism that must have been involved, because this was a huge, huge empire. Chapter 14, then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the living creatures, the 4 living creatures and the elders. The Lamb was the Bab. Mount Zion means Mount Carmel. The new song was the new revelation. Chapter 15, the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and his power. No one could enter the temple until the 7 scourges of the 7 angels ended. The religion of God fills with the spirit of Baha'u'llah and his power. Everyone can take part in the one religion of God since the 7 inflictions until the 7 inflictions of the 7 messengers end. Chapter 16, the last of past history. The kings of the whole world were being gathered for the battle of the great day of God Almighty. They were gathered together in a place that is called in Hebrew Armageddon. And Armageddon is mentioned only once in the Bible, right here. We are on the eve of the Battle of Armageddon referred to in the 16th chapter of Revelation. And this is Abdu'l-Baha speaking. The time is 2 years hence. He was speaking in 1912, when only a spark will set aflame the whole of Europe. The social unrest in all countries the growing religious skepticism antecedents to the millennium, and already here, will set aflame the whole of Europe, as is prophesied in the book of Daniel, in the book of Revelation. We have been in the Armageddon, therefore, for over 100 years. It's not a matter of when will it come. It's been here long before we were even born. And where does the word Armageddon come from? And its true meaning here is really key. The Hebrew source for Armageddon is Har Magedon, which means Mount Megiddo or Megiddo. Har means mountain. Megiddo was the capital city for the valley of Megiddo, which is now an archaeological site. And Megiddo is no mountain. It's only 225 feet high, over 15 acres. And I've been there myself several times while I was at the World Center, so I can attest to how small it really is. Rather, the real mountain of Har Magedon can only be the one mountain that commands the Megiddo Valley. This is Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel is indeed the true mountain of Har Magedon. Okay, now we're coming into the present, or the slight future. Come, I will show you the judgment of the gross whore who sits over many waters, with whom the rulers of the earth have been fornicating, and with the wine of whose fornication those living on the earth have gotten drunk. Wow. Come, John, I will show you the judgment of gross seduction, greed, gross seductive greed that drives nations, crowds, peoples, and languages, with which leaders of the world profiteer, and in the grip of whose profiteering the inhabitants of the earth are crazily seduced. Sound familiar? It sounds pretty harsh too. Abel writes that gross, chaotic, malignant materialism means the breeder of greed and global depravity. And that is what is called the whore of Babylon, malignant materialism. Chapter 18, after these things, I saw another angel landing from the sky with great authority. After these visions, I behold Baha'u'llah as another messenger sent from the divine realm with great authority. It has fallen. Vast, chaotic Babylon has fallen. It has become a den for demons, a haunt for every foul spirit, a haven for every foul and hateful bird, for all nations have fallen drunk from the wine of its furious fornicating. The rules of the globe have fornicated with it, and the merchants of power have grown rich from the power of its extravagance. Oh my, that is a bit rough. And it hasn't ended yet, but we can hope that malignant materialism is in the process of ending. Chapter 19. Come, gather for God's great banquet to eat carrion of rulers, carrion of generals, mighty men, horses, and riders, meaning carrion for all, both free and slave, small and great. Remember Ezekiel's great sacrifice? I think this is what it's referring to. Come, gather for God's great celebration to take spoils from leaders, from generals, magnates, malign forces of power politics, widespread warfare, economic injustice, and callous neglect, and from the corrupt systems, national greed, corporate greed, its slothful inertia driving them, meaning spoils for all, both owners and workers, and both less and more important people. Well, we'll see if that happens. It hasn't happened yet. And now we are coming into chapter 20. The next 3 chapters, the end, are the future. He, Baha'u'llah, seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be set free for a short time. The abyss is the pit of error, of ignorance. And the seizing of the dragon has not happened yet, so we don't know when these 1,000 years are to be. He blocks militant Islam, the primeval ancestral that is lying evil and hatred. He binds it up for 1,000 years. He damns it to its spiritual error. He silences and shuns it so that it can no longer delude nations until the millennium ends. After that, it is bound to run amok for a short time. Well, that's pretty strong. I saw thrones on which were seated those who had been given authority to judge. Next, I see a universal house of justice. To it are elected Baha'i leaders. To them is given the authority to enact commandments. And when the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in all 4 corners of the earth. Gog and Magog gather for battle, but fire came down from heaven and devoured them. This is the only mention of Gog and Magog outside Ezekiel. Abel's take on it is, after the millennium ends in AM 7000, which is the 7th Jewish millennium, or the year 3240, hatred will run amok from its isolation. It will delude nations across the entire planet as a global tyranny and its forces to drive all to the warfare of war. But God's fury shall burst and demolish them. I do not know what the year 3240 means, and so I will not speculate. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. And I saw the holy city in the new Jerusalem. Now I behold a new future spiritual and material law, for prior spiritual and material law is being transcended, and there will be no more divisive unity. I behold a unique system, a divine civilization, sent from the divine realm by God, prepared by the promise Baha'u'llah revealed for his partner, the Bab. So we're looking at the old world order and the new world order. I did not see a temple in the city because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the lamp to shine on it, for the glory of God gives its light, and the Lamb is its lamp. It shall need no greater or lesser clergy to teach it, for Baha'u'llah has revealed it, and its teacher was the Bab. The last chapter. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing the fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Then Baha'u'llah reveals to me his vast knowledge of life in excellent brilliance, rushing out of his Baha'i revelation of God and the Bab. within the central core of his divine civilization and its vast knowledge, elegantly balanced, life wisdom fruited by faiths, each delivering its teachings era by era, the pages of its wisdom healing nations. Now, in Genesis, the fruit, divine knowledge from the tree of life was forbidden. Now the tree of life is being offered to us. And if you're interested in the logic, here are two more books. The Logic of the Apocalypse by Stephen Beebe is excellent on Amazon. The Apocalypse, an Exegesis by Robert Riggs is excellent. It's in soft copy only. And if you're interested in getting the logic, John Abel's book, it's available only on Amazon. And of course, my books, available through Amazon and BahaiBookstore.com. And I have a website that you're welcome to go on, and you can see articles and Zoomcasts that I have done. And this wraps it up. I hope that it was helpful.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm looking at the questions right now, and I'm trying to pull up the first question. I'm sorry.
Can you see me? John, can you see me?
No, I can't. Actually, Jeremiah, if you can see any on Facebook or YouTube, I couldn't see any myself. There may be one.
You have to turn the video back on.
I can't see any questions, but I have a question or Jeremiah, you found one?
No. Unfortunately, I'm trying to get Eileen's video turned back on, but it's not giving me the ability to ask her to turn it on.
I am having problems, unable to connect to Network Scanner. So why don't we just go ahead with the audio for the audience?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the question that I have is this idea of interpretation of Gog and Magog. You had said earlier about these, and I'm paraphrasing, so please, if you could cite it even better. The 71 meetings we had discussed earlier.
Yes.
So we have discussed a few meanings, but there's other meanings that exist out there as well, correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. So this is just a little bit into a whole universe of thought and discovery and truth seeking that we need to engage in. And this is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning, and that's why I really encourage people to investigate for themselves, because it's really, really fascinating. And I hope I'm not the only person who finds the book of Revelation fascinating. Once you have the keys to start interpreting it, and the various resources that I gave will give you keys to start the journey.
Thank you for explaining that. And that's actually a good place to speak on, is that this the series that Eileen has come out with, there's a few books. It's definitely something to read and use as reference as you go through reading the Bible. Particularly, Eileen is focused on the Old Testament, and it's very rich in meaning. It's rich in its text, of course, just the sheer scope. And then at the same time, it's very rich, again, in the amount of interpretation you can pull out of it. Many people have spent their entire lives dwelling on just the Old Testament alone. So again, thank you so much, Eileen, for sharing all that. I'm seeing here, there's a question from Diana here in the chat to everyone. She asks, who is, in quotes, Satan considered?
Well, of course, you have the literal interpretation, which means that Satan is a real energy who is the embodiment of evil. And we also have the Baha'i approach, which is that evil as an embodiment does not exist. And you will run across the word Satan a few times, I believe, in the Baha'i writings, but it's not meant literally. The Baha'i approach to Satan is simply our own, what I call our own insistent voices, our own lesser selves, that we always have to be alert about and try to overcome. So Satan, in another sense, is inside all of us. And our purpose on life is to overcome any evil and whichever components of evil that you want to put in there, like pride, avarice, greed. It's up to us to overcome them as much as we can while we are in this life. Does that answer the question?
I was referring more to the book of Revelation.
What does Satan mean in the Revelation, in the book of Revelation?
So I think the question comes to that how you referenced, and I can't remember which chapter you were referring to, but you referenced that Mu'ah was seen as he came to power in 666, and so he's been associated. He's not really associated with that, but from a historical standpoint, is there anyone in the Revelation in its entirety that is attributed to the label Satan?
No. No, you have the mark of the beast. If the book of Revelation says the word Satan, it's meant in the way that I just described, not literally. Remember what Abdu'l-Baha said. The book of Revelation is meant to be taken symbolically, not literally. And whenever you run across the term Satan, again, it's a symbol. It's not a separate embodiment that's out there somewhere. And I think I also forgot to mention that when it comes to Gog and Magog, I have pretty well figured out that Gog is an archetype. If you're looking for a real person to be Gog, I don't think you will find that person. He's an archetype. Again, sought another symbol for Satan? I don't know. But Gog is a force. And we certainly do see Gog in the Battle of Armageddon today in our world. It's not a matter of when God is going to meet with his forces in the valley of Megiddo. That has already happened. And Gog is in our newspapers every day. He hasn't been conquered yet.
So, John, do we have any other questions? I don't see anything on social media specifically. And so now would be the time, if anyone in Zoom has any more questions, we could do that, or I guess we could.
Yeah, so I will just make it a last call for questions. If there's any others, by all means, please, we're happy to entertain them. And that last question was very helpful. Thank you, Diana.
Yes, I have a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
So Gog is a force of evil. And Magog, you said it's interpreted as Russia. So
Well,
Russia would be the force of evil.
Well, that's the evangelical approach. Throughout history, many, many places have been named as the land of Magog, and many, many persons have been called Magog. But that's not exactly how it is. I hesitate, having explained that Gog is a force of evil. Russia does not have an extra big piece of the pie with that. Let's just put it that way. There are many forces that could be called Magog, evil forces. And I tried
I
why.
thought you had said that generally it's believed that Russia is Magog.
But that was through the context of the evangelical kind of thought.
Yes.
For the past,
Yes.
couple decades. But that's not the official kind of Baha'i understanding. Anything when it comes to Baha'i understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Eileen, is more of a universal kind of symbolic kind of thought.
Exactly.
So it would be a universal force of evil.
There's elements that appear in all societies, not any one particular society, that is not good. So it's destructive to humanity. So there's just in America alone a lot of evil forces at play. You have in every country on the world evil at play, and it's not that it's per se a substantive force that, for example, it's describing something that is in a direct way. It's describing something that's not there, that's off. So the idea of making mistakes, someone does not intend to make a mistake, but they make them. It's considered evil even sometimes, but those mistakes that people make, that's not per se because it's intended in its direct form, but it can still be bad. So there's a lot of characterizations of what could be not good. And that does not mean per se that there's one nefarious force that is, I guess, omniscient and acting against us. It's more a breakdown that we're exhibiting around the world, where people are, for example, worshiping materialism and their own self-interests over the altruistic needs that society has, and over the need for actual service to humanity versus service to self, for example. And you can see that when I'm talking about service to self, that is a very big thing in the West. So it's not particularly in any specific country that selfishness has taken root and is the predominant force.
Absolutely. You explained that very well.
Thank you, Eileen. But yeah, I thought it was important to talk about this idea of evil. And Diana brought up a very big point, because
yes,
we like to label a particular group, which is not us. And the fact of the matter is that we really need to realize that it is us collectively. And
yes,
it's not any group of them, it's us.
I think it's
Also,
also something in historical context as well. I think when questions are asked from people in general, and Diana just posed it first, but this concept that all of the book of Revelation is prophecy and it's about predicting. And so people, they try to extrapolate that and figure out from this point on in their own personal lives what could possibly be a milestone or a marker that they can identify going forward into the future. But a lot of these, as Eileen was expressing, a lot of these prophecies end at around chapter 16, right? And then
yes,
and then
yes,
at that point, 17 on, it's like the transition of trying to get people to understand the effect in the revelation of the Baha'i faith and how that's supposed to affect society going forward.
exactly. And, prophecy is understood so well when it's all over in the past and come true. It's very difficult to really project what's going to happen in the future. For instance, the limbs of mankind will quake, Baha'u'llah said. And we used to have conversations about what's going to happen, what's going to happen. Well, what's happening is the last thing that we ever could have imagined. So, in other words, you just kind of have to stand off on the sidelines and watch it, but at the same time, have faith that Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i faith will emerge triumphant. That is the foundational thought of the last 3 chapters of Revelation. But how it's going to happen, that we don't know.
So my Eileen, my understanding of going through what Baha'u'llah provides as our future, and Abdul Baha, of course, explains a bit more on it, is that irreligion is going to grow, and not just irreligion, and that the pillars of religion will be no longer there, that effectively the world is going to be very atheistic and and be, worshiping its own designs versus what God provided. So in putting just logic in place and seeing, I guess I'm going to invoke the philosophical concept of efficient cause, this idea of the ingredients being there for society's decline. If you take out religion, as the prophecy that we have is that people will again start, and they are, you can see around you that a religion is really taken root in the heart of our societies around the world, that the guide rails that existed for humanity since time immemorial, these guide rails not being there is going to allow us to do anything and everything when something happens that may not be per se the best option to take. So when you think of Murphy's Law, the idea that anything that can happen will happen, there's no telling exactly what's going to be the final straw for humanity to get to that point where its limbs will quake. But it's very easy to see with the logic of what the Baha'i faith is introducing to us. It's that there's this need to focus on society building forces, and having the pillar of religion, it needs to be there. And where society is trying to function without it, we are with our own attempts to find a system that will work, and they don't. We are ourselves, when we're hit with a calamity, be it a hurricane, natural disasters of all kinds, be it pandemics, be it wars, the restraints that would have existed traditionally no longer being there.
And this is exactly why I included several quotations, and I'm paraphrasing now, where the Lord says, "And they will know that I am the Lord your God." That's what this is all about. And yes, absolutely. We don't know what exactly is going to bring society to its knees, but it will happen. And then society will know that God is the Lord, just like in those verses that I quoted. He is the Lord our God. And it's not so matter, I don't think, of what house of worship people go to, although I'd love to see them all at feast. But it's simply the recognition that nothing has changed since the days of Moses. We are his people. We are his Israelites. We are having our spiritual battles. Nothing has changed. And this is probably the gist of the Hebrew prophets. Nothing has changed. Everything that was said back then is pretty well true if you look at it symbolically. And some of it is still happening.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you very much. This is a good place for us to stop for now. We want to thank everyone that has joined this session. Again, this is part we welcome you to view part 1 on YouTube or Facebook as it's recorded and loaded online. We welcome all of you to go to clearwaterbahais.org. Eileen is one of our returning speakers, and we look forward to have her again. We look forward to having all of you who have joined to also contribute with your questions, your thoughts. We're going to be having another presentation next week. We welcome all of you to that one. And again, thank you, Eileen, so much for joining us. Thank you for your patience as we proceeded in the beginning. And we were very happy that we were able to get through the presentation today. It was very much worth the wait. Thank you.
Thank you.